Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our Tulip Fields project. Oh. We have Keenan here working the cameras.
Hello.
And this is from our Around the World box, which this whole theme is about these kind of like beautiful, more natural aspects of specific places that we can go and visit.
Cool.
Like tulip fields.
Excellent. Very beautiful fields.
Yes. Have you seen them in person, Keenan?
In Germany,
okay,
I saw similar, not this vibrant, but I saw like yellows and blue.
Ooh.
Weird, no, not blue. I remember colors.
Sure, yes.
There were lots of colors.
It sounds lovely.
I ran through one.
You did?
I don't know if I'm supposed to.
Well, people will let us know, so don't you worry about that.
It was really great.
Okay, so we are going to be doing this project in 5 steps. So our very first step is we are going to do our sky. Our second step is we are going to do our flower sections. Our third step is kind of like the green grass sections in between the flower sections. Our fourth step, we'll be doing our flower details. And the fifth step, adding some trees on our shadow. And we'll be doing the trees when we do the sky. So we have 4 paintbrushes here. Round 2, round 6, round 12, 1-inch wash. I also have 2 Neocolors here. This is the bonus item in the Around the World box. They're water-soluble wax pastel, and they're really fun.
They are.
So I'm having the best time playing with them, and they come in a bunch of different colors, but these 2 are kind of my favorite colors. Give me a navy and a yellow ochre all day, right?
All day.
All day. I have 5 colors that I'm using for this project. So our very first color is Azure blue. Second color is emerald green. Third color, Dandelion yellow. Fourth color, Magenta. And last color here is Orchid. So we are going to use all these gorgeous vibrant colors to create. I already transferred the outline to my paper, and I just want to acknowledge that the outline will not go to your paper's edge. So I just taped, after I did the outline, I brought in my tape, so then it goes to the outline edge. Or you can just continue the line. Let's do our oath and get to painting.
Okay.
If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. All right, for our sky, we're just gonna jump right in. I'm gonna use my 1-inch wash, and I'm gonna wet the entire sky. Trying to avoid the windmill, at least the like big chunks of the windmill, if you can. If you overlap it a little bit, that's okay, but do your best. So again, just using clean water, avoiding the windmill. And you can do as many layers as you want.
I don't know why, but I always think of Jack and the Beanstalk when I see a windmill.
Really?
Pretty sure it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember a windmill in the story, but. Okay, now I'm gonna use my round 12, and I'm gonna mix a little bit of my Azure with a little bit of Orchid to get, it's kind of just more like a more intense blue. Add some water to that, and then I'm just gonna swoop it in. Now, I went really like strong blue in my sky in this painting. I did a few like strong washes, and you can keep that. Or if you want to lighten it, feel free to lighten it. I might lighten it just a tad, just for fun. I'm going to introduce some like swoop. I love doing like these big swoops with my 12-inch brush. Now with skies, you just have to remember that the more it goes down in space, those like cloud swoops that you're painting are going to get like thinner and closer together. So here at the top, we kind of did this in the Hawaii sunrise, but at the top, they're kind of more big and angled. And then as we get down here, it's gonna be like boop, boop, kind of just swoop it back and forth. I'll blend that out. So again, just trying to work around my windmill. And maybe we'll do a stronger, I like it when the horizon also has just like stronger hints of color.
Man, I love how the watercolor just blends.
I know!
Gosh.
It is the best. Like, look at that. Look at this gorgeous sky.
I know.
It took us like 15 seconds to put it in.
Maybe 30.
Oh, yeah. I guess I don't really have... I'm just making numbers up. In 3 seconds, you can paint this sky. And if you want to darken the, like, kind of really... I mean, the darkest value usually is at the very top and at the very, like, horizon line when all those clouds are more concentrated. And if you want to do more layers to match this value, I think I did one more layer, go for it. If you don't, you can leave it just like this. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I just want to acknowledge the different options and opportunities you have, because you should have the freedom to make decisions, even as you're learning. Okay, great. Now what we are going to do is we are going to put in our like tree shrubbery. Now we're going to do this when the sky is kind of damp, because I want that foliage to kind of expand and grow. And I've noticed that when you do wet on wet techniques, when the area is very, very wet, you're going to get a lot of movement. If the area is kind of damp, you'll get just a little bit of movement. And if the area is dry, you won't get any movement. That color will just stay right there. So pay attention to the wetness and dryness of your paper and then make a decision. Do you want it to feel crazy and expansive and it's going so high up into the sky? Well, do it while it's really wet. If you want it to stay a little bit maintained and a little bit tighter, do it when your painting is just barely damp. And then if you don't want it to move at all, wait till it's dry. Okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna grab a little bit of my green and maybe a little yellow to get this like really pretty, almost highlighter green color. And I'm just gonna see how far it moves if I put it in right now. So I want to acknowledge I am not gonna go all the way to the outline, because the paint will continue to move when I move on. And so this is probably going to expand past my outline, and I just did kind of the bottom. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So I want to just show you that you don't have to go all the way to the outline.
When you say outline,
Yeah.
what are you referring to?
The shrubbery outline on this project.
Oh, got it. Okay.
This.
I couldn't see it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh,
You can't
got it.
see it in
Okay.
the drawing. And then if like I put that color in, it's kind of moving, and then I'm just gonna kind of help it. If it's not moving how much I want it to, then I can be like, come on, little guy, move around for me.
I did some research,
Okay?
and it took 2 minutes to do the wash.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Well, that's not nearly as impressive as I thought.
This wasn't 30 seconds. So sorry.
I was completely wrong, and that's embarrassing. All right,
Not embarrassing, it's just good knowledge to have.
there we go.
If you got a spare 2 minutes, boom, sky.
Sky. All right, that's still pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll
It takes 15 minutes to eat a meal, 2 minutes to paint a sky.
It takes you 15 minutes to eat a meal?
Maybe 3.
3.
Maybe 2.
We need to test this sometime.
Okay.
I'll do sky wash. You
I'll
eat your
eat a
meal.
meal.
Let's see how this goes. Okay, and then our color is very light right now. So remember, at the end, we'll go back and put in the medium and dark values on our tree line to give a sense of dimension. Right now it's looking a little bit flat, but that's okay, because we'll go back and address it. Now we are going to move on to step 2. We're going to do the flower fields. Now you can choose whatever colors you want for these different sections. The one thing that I would like you to do as you're painting this is we want the strongest concentration of value or the darkest value in the back, and then as it works its way forward, we're going to lighten the value. And that's just a way that we can communicate the concentration of the flowers, because in the foreground you're going to be able to see a little bit of like the different shapes and maybe hints of the stems, but then when it's a very concentrated section of flowers far away, you can't see the stems. You can only see the tops of the flowers. So that's how we're gonna give a hint to depth and how concentrated these flowers are in our painting. Okay?
Okay.
Now, you want to make sure that when you paint these sections, either this part is completely dry or leave a little bit of a thin line, because if you touch pink into that sky, it's just gonna. So I'm gonna do a quick one of these, try and dry that line.
We could do a competition. We could call it space versus in the face.
Yes. Love it.
Whoever loses has to eat a specific thing that no one likes to eat. I was thinking soggy cereal for you.
Yeah, and crispy cereal for you.
It's just hard to eat.
Is it?
Yeah, it hurts the roof of your mouth.
It's satisfying. What type of crispy cereal are you eating?
Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast.
You know what?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Captain Crunch is good, but it destroys your mouth.
Yeah, you gotta eat it soggy.
No. The crunch is the best part. Captain Crunch. Come on.
Agree to disagree.
Okay. So I'm going to start with magenta right here. So I'm going to take my 12, because these are pretty thick spaces, so I want to use a larger brush. I'm going to start trying to avoid that line, even though I dried it. I just am still afraid that it will bleed out everywhere. And then you're going to move the color down, and then you're going to do a couple rinses of your brush, hit it off the side of your cup and your paper towel, and then keep kind of moving. Again, rinse your brush, side of the cup, paper towel, keep moving.
Little known fact about Captain Crunch. He was recently promoted to Major Soggy. So you tell me which is better.
You're on fire today. Look at this. Okay. Try and get a smooth transition. You can see I kind of have a harder line right there. So I'm just going to kind of blend that out. If it's not perfectly smooth, it's not the end of the world. But try your best. All right, that's pretty good. Now we're just going to kind of repeat that across all of these sections. This one I'm going to do Orchid. And then we're going to start working in every other section because they're right next to each other. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want them to bleed.
It would be really fun to walk through these fields.
I know, I dream about it. I'm going to do it one day. And then while it's still wet like this, I'm going to drop in just a little bit. And this is going to help when we do our like flower heads. I didn't do it on the magenta one, so let's see if I can do it now. It might lift a little bit, but that's okay. And these marks that we're making, the foreground ones, the ones closest to us should be larger. And then as they work their way back, they're going to get a little bit smaller. Okay. So just kind of like we do a wash, value change, and then we drop in. All right, I'm going to do this light pink one right here. So it's just going to take magenta, add some water. I guess I just realized that since we're dropping in the little bits of color, it doesn't totally need to be a perfectly smooth wash. You know what I mean? Because we just kind of like...
It'll have good variances anyway.
Yeah. So don't stress too much about getting a perfectly smooth. Okay, now I'm going to move to this side because I want to let that dry before I try and paint anything next to it. We're going to do just yellow. So rinse your brush. Grab some of this gorgeous yellow.
The field I ran through, They were probably, it was probably a field of whatever the plant was, things your height.
No.
They were huge.
That's awesome.
That was cool.
Okay. Now let's do this one. This one has a little bit of magenta in there to make it warmer, kind of more like an orange. But again, you want to make sure your tree line is dry. And these ones that are farther away, it's a little bit harder to get that value change. So sometimes just doing a little color block in there works. Okay. And then this one is like an orange, like a stronger orange color. So let's go ahead and mix more of that magenta into that yellow. And if you need to move to your 6 for these smaller areas, that's totally fine. Now when we think about like the rows in between, sometimes they're like little dirt things or just like grass or something like that. You want to, the same is true for those rows as it is with these flowers, which is they're going to be wider closest to us, and then as they recede, they'll get thinner and thinner and thinner. So try and be aware of that as you're kind of filling in these sections. Okay, let's do some textures in there. Now we'll do just yellow. And remember, this is your painting. And if you've gone to like tulip fields, no matter where they are, I feel like, you know, like the Netherlands is known for them, but there's a lot of places that have them. We even actually have a little tulip field farm here in the Fun Farm.
Oh,
in the spring
that's
turns
right.
into, yeah. I haven't been to it yet.
I haven't either.
But you know, if you have pictures or if there's a place that you want to remember, look at your photos from that. You know, turn it into that space so it's more like you've been here before, you know?
Cool.
Okay. And I'm going to do one more. And I know that I have a light pink here in my reference, but I feel like this is a really actually light pink. So I'm going to move it to more like a purple color instead. So I'm going to take some of my orchid and mix a tiny bit of blue with it, of my azure blue, and that's going to turn it kind of like a violet color. Tulips come in violet.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, sure.
I think you can change the color of a rose. So I'm pretty sure you can change the color of a tulip. You just have to add food dye in the water that you have your roses in.
Does that kill them?
I have no idea.
Me neither.
Not before they change color.
Yeah, I've always wondered, because I know that's how you get like rainbow colored flowers, like daisies and stuff at the store.
Mm-hmm.
But I never knew if it like...
Kills them faster?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a flower-safe food dye.
Maybe. People who know flowers,
Teach
tell us. Share your knowledge. I'm going to blend this out a little bit because that got pretty dark. Oh, you can see I crossed the boundary. We'll see how that bleeds. If that happens, you can try and minimize that by just kind of lifting up right there. And then the green should be dark enough to kind of like be able to define those edges a little bit better. And we have a purple over here, but it's not dry yet, so I'm going to help it with my heat tool. Heat it, craft tool.
Craft.
My yellow lost a little bit of saturation right here, so I'll probably do another run of it just to kind of brighten it up.
Bolster its morale.
I think I'm going to use the Neocolor on that.
Ooh, cool.
Okay. Now let's try the violet over here. Violet, you're turning violet. Willy Wonka.
Oh, Willy Wonka.
switch to my 6 because it's a smaller section. Okay. Now what we are going to do is we're going to start putting in the green sections between our flowers. Now you'll notice that in our green sections we have different values going on, and that is because we want to communicate that the ground is kind of like, like we're seeing the sides of the tulip and then the ground. So they have to be different green values to show that one is flat and one is standing up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So here, the sides of these tulips are a bright green, and then the ground, these rows of tulips are casting a shadow on the ground on top of it being flat.
Tricky.
This is the opposite, where we see the ground, but the sides of the, you know what I mean? Like we have to define where it goes. And we do that just by switching up the values. So we're gonna take our leaf green, and let's start with putting the bright, like that green color in first. Now, if you wanna add a little bit of blue to your green to give it a blue hint instead of just like a yellow, you can. And I'm going to take this green and work along the left hand side here and keep this green line going all the way here. And we're just going to spread out that green using water. And I'll go back in and put in the darker values, okay? There's one, and then here, and in the foreground I created like a little bit of a wavy line next to my flowers, because you have to think about these individual flowers and how some of them, like maybe one was growing out a little bit more, you know, it kind of like has a little bit of an uneven line. And then as long as these are dry, remember to thin out your line as it gets
nice
nearer. So you start with kind of like pushing down, doing thicker pressure at the base, and then you just like slowly lift up your pressure to get a thinner line as you go towards the back. Same for this one. Okay, now we gotta add some dimension, right? Everything is looking a little bit flat right now, and so we're like, where's the depth, Sarah?
Yeah.
Where's the form?
Yeah, where's the life?
Where is it? I'm gonna take this green, I'm gonna mix it in with this like purple blue mixture that I already have on my palette. That's gonna just create a darker green. And along this edge here, I'm going to introduce that dark green on the right hand side, and then I'm just going to blend it out to about halfway. And then if you want to do, sometimes I like, while it's wet like this, just dropping in another. I'm getting kind of a harsher line here than I anticipated. So if that's bothering you, just take a damp brush and kind of blend it out. Your dark value should still stay on this side, so you should be okay value-wise. All right, and then on this hand side, it's not gonna go right to the edge. We're gonna leave a little bit of space in between. So there's like a little highlight along the edge. Then we do that dark value. And remember, if you need to do like another wash, go for it. If you're just like, no, that green value is still just too light, well, let's darken it. We can always add more. That's the nice thing about watercolor, and why sometimes it's easier to work a little bit lighter right away, because then you can always just build on top. There we go. Now we're getting some depth here where we can feel that there's different like planes and shadows going on. You see?
Yep.
Okay, same thing here. And this one is just kind of more at the start of it. Right underneath this side. When it gets small and detailed, like, I mean, just like tiny, sometimes just a little hint of a line is all you need. You don't need to go full on crazy. This is where we're going to see the most because of how wide it is and where our perspective is to the painting. Okay. Let's do our windmill.
Okay.
So I'm going to mix brown. Brown is essentially dark orange, so I need to mix yellow and magenta. That's going to make orange. I'm going to add a little bit of blue in there. And now I have brown. And I want to mix like a dark brown too. So I have like, this is like a warm, kind of lighter brown. And then I'm going to take some orchid, and let's take some yellow. That creates kind of like a reddish brown. Let's mix some green in there. There we go. Now we have like kind of a burnt umber color. Okay.
Nice color.
Thank you. Now, just using my 6, and I'm going to start with the lighter brown. I'm going to just paint these little sections. And I want to kind of show that these are like different edges where it's not like round and smooth. It's kind of like a dun, dun, dun. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
My does?
Yeah, your directional hand movements and the sounds.
So I'm going to leave a little bit of a white line in between to be like trying to describe the different facets. Is that the right word?
Faces?
No, like
because they're built like octagons, right?
Yeah.
Or more. So the different angles have different shading.
Yeah. But I had a really hard time making this guy look straight. So it always ended up looking a little bit wonky, no matter like how thoughtful I try to be with my edges and lines. So just do your best. People are going to be able to tell what it is. I think my next like learning thing that I really gotta take on is buildings. I feel like I haven't. It used to be landscapes, and then the last couple of years I've been doing like just landscapes, and I feel pretty good where my landscapes are. Now I need to go and do buildings because I feel like my structures are always just a little bit off. But
Goes back to that ruler usage.
Oh, I hate rulers. Struggle with them, obviously. Okay, I'm just gonna.
Right now, without the windmill fans, it looks like a brown salt and pepper shaker.
That is exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, that looks like a salt and pepper shaker, 100%.
Yeah.
Pass the pepper, please, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, now for the little windmill part, what are those called? Do you know, Keenan? I'm just gonna paint using dark brown in my 2. I'm gonna paint the thicker portion. And then I'm gonna grab my Neocolor and I'm gonna do the rest. So I'm gonna do the other line, and then I'm gonna do like the softest thin lines crisscross in there.
Blade?
Blade? Yeah, because those are like a grate almost, so they're not solid. And sometimes just using something like a pencil, pen, crayon, wax pastel, just to give a hint of the area without filling it in is just what you need to make it nice and rich. I'm gonna let that dry for a second, and what I'm probably going to do, honestly, is adjust my shrubbery line to kind of cover a little bit more of my windmill. And I do that all of the time. If there is something in my painting that's a little wonky, I'm like, oh no, that tree just happened to grow huge right in front of it.
Huh.
And then you can't see it anymore.
How convenient.
I know, it works out so great. The tricks of an artist, you just hide the areas you don't like. Okay, so I'm gonna get this wet, my Neocolor, the yellow one. And I accidentally touched the green with it. I'm just gonna kind of color in this back yellow. It has such a gorgeous gold color. And if you want to smooth out that line with the damp brush, like if you don't like those texture lines, you can take a clean paintbrush, and after you applied the Neocolor, you can just smooth it out. I'm going to do that a little along the top. Okay. Now, for this area, I am going to do kind of flower textures a little bit. So I'm going to do larger marks in the foreground. And then as I work my way back, the marks are going to get a little bit smaller. And then eventually they kind of, and this is true for flower fields, they kind of just turn into thin lines, kind of blend into the value that we have here. Play with these different marks, play with moving and rolling the wax pastel. Just have fun with it. People are going to be able to tell that these are tulip fields, like just the coloring alone. Yeah. People are going to know what's going on. And I love that because then it gives me freedom to explore textures, colors, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe a little bit back here too. Okay. Now,
looks cool.
It's looking good, right?
Yeah.
I feel like this green needs a stronger green, stronger shadow, darker value right here. And it's always a good idea to check things as you go. Your painting changes not only as it dries, but whenever you introduce more values, more colors, more details, it affects the other thing. Like these elements in your painting are not independent of each other. So if you're like, oh, when I initially put that down, I thought that was a dark enough value, but then now that I started putting in all these dark values, it doesn't seem dark enough. So every new element you introduce informs the rest of your painting. So it's always a good idea to kind of like step back, take a look at what's happening, make adjustments, and so on. Okay, now I'm gonna start putting in flower details, step 4. So I'm gonna take my magenta, and let's start here. And I'm just going to start doing these larger marks, like the heads of flowers. And it's okay if they overlap, because think about your angle. If you were to look over on top of it, then yes, they would be individual. But the more like side, the more you move to the side of it, the more you'll just see like the tips of the tops, and they'll all connect, you know? So we're kind of like in between, where we're standing over it, but not directly over it. So then we see the individuals, and then as it goes to the back, they get smaller and smaller.
And lighter because they're farther away?
Well, this one I'm doing opposite.
Oh, okay.
See how the value is darker?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I guess if we were following that atmospheric perspective rule, it would be opposite. I think what throws me off is the concentration of color. Does that make sense?
Where the concentration of color is located?
Yeah, because I'm thinking my flowers are going to be the most concentrated back here.
Yes.
But the reason why I also needed to leave this light value in the front is because your foreground should have the strongest contrast. I needed to have dark and like my darkest dark and my lightest light in the foreground, and I needed to leave space for stems. If I painted this really, really dark and then moved it lighter in the back, I wouldn't have the ability to layer the stems and then be seen because watercolor is transparent. So I needed to do a light value to leave room for dark values because you want that contrast right in the front.
Got it.
Got it?
Yep.
And it's okay if they overlap the green a little bit. Okay, now does that more look like flowers?
Yes, it does.
Okay, we're gonna do the same thing with the orchid. Grab orchid, grab your round 6. Nice big blooms that kind of overlap. They're gonna get smaller as they go back. Try and mess up that edge. And try and work quickly.
It's hard with all these little dots.
I know, so I'm like challenging myself. It's just gonna kind of like thin out. Okay, now we gotta do the same thing with the orange. So we're just gonna basically do this on these here. The farthest ones, because those are so far, we're not really gonna see the same detail as we do in the foreground, right? So.
Right. That orange is so pretty.
Well, you're partial to orange, aren't you?
I am, but man, that's great color.
Yeah. Okay, and then like the areas that I see that are kind of like white, I'm just gonna start kind of closing those in, just kind of blending them out. So like on here, a little bit of orchid. I'm gonna blend to that line. And we'll take care of that horizon when we get there. We're not quite there yet. Okay, now let's add some stems. Actually, let's do the flowers here. And that will be the last one that we kind of mess with. This one again, I'm kind of doing more loose overlapping because we're not seeing the individual like blooms as well because this is farther than these ones. Okay. Now I'm going to take my 2, grab some green, start adding some stems. And there's also like leaves, right? So if you want to do like a thicker.
Ooh, I like that.
And again, this isn't like the most like photorealist painting, but I'm just trying to show you guys how just by some simple rules of larger in the front and it gets smaller in the back and a little bit of detail and then nothing, you know, like just like small things that you can do to communicate depth, space, that kind of thing. And then kind of like halfway through, the green should almost all the way disappear, because we should just be seeing kind of tulip heads at this point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can do a little bit here and there. Okay. Now, I want you to pay attention to how, like, I did a wash here but do you see how this is starting to look like white paper underneath because of how much, that's what I mean, your values are going to change as you go. So if you need to go back to an area, and it doesn't have to totally erase it, but just to soften it so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb.
Those sore thumbs.
They get you.
Especially during the holidays. They just can't mind their business.
Then you can just kind of soften them. There we go, that feels better. Maybe the same over here. And this is what I mean, you gotta go back and look at, check your values, check the sections. And it's okay, I'm just like kind of smearing the paint that's already there, which I actually think is one of my favorite techniques, is just to like mess it up. Yeah. And you can, again, you can always add more. But just be careful to not overwork, because I tend to do that sometimes, especially when I'm teaching.
No comment.
Keenan's like, you're doing it right now. Right now you're doing it. Stop it.
Is this one of those times?
It is.
That you're tended to do?
Yes, I can tell. But I can't. Oh, but gosh, look at that color.
It looks great.
I feel like this back here needs to be a little bit darker. And maybe my violet too. And again, I'm just kind of blending the areas where there's white sections. Just trying to get rid of those so they don't take away from my painting. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of shadow on my windmill right underneath the top, kind of along this top edge. Give it just a little bit of dimension. As if this like top part is casting a shadow right underneath. Okay. And now what we are going to do is we're going to do our tree shadows and then like just finish, tighten anything up that's still standing out. So I'm gonna mix a dark green. I'm gonna take some of my blue, a little bit of my green, maybe some yellow, grab some brown. And I am going to use my 6. And I'm gonna just like kind of at the bottom, put in this dark green. Because if you think about like trees or foliage, it's like roundish and it kind of like comes out and then goes underneath, and under it are trunks or bushes, and it's like shadowed because the tree itself is casting a shadow. So we're gonna like add those in a little bit. So I put that in, and then I'm gonna take a damp brush and just kind of like messily and clumsily blend that out.
Oh, wow.
And voila, we got form on our...
Major form.
Yeah.
Recently promoted.
What was his name?
Major form?
No.
Major Soggy.
Yes.
From Captain Crunch to Major Soggy.
Wow, what a treat for him.
I see what you did there.
Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing over here and kind of like play with the different greens that you get. Maybe some are a little bit more brown, some are a little bit more blue. like maybe even yellow if you want. And then kind of use a clean, damp brush and just like messily blend it out. Sometimes all something needs, especially in like the background, is the slightest value change, or at least just a few different values, and all of the sudden without meaning to. Or I guess we are kind of meaning to. It's dimensional. There are layers, there's foliage, and then I'm gonna go a little crazy over here and kind of
Those could be vines.
Adjust my windmill. Oh yeah. And if you want to add like a little bit of yellow right at the top. It could even be like layers and layers of bushes and trees, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then the other thing that I'm doing is when I introduce this kind of darker value and I blend it out, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to go across this line along the top of the fields to show there is a difference. I don't want a white highlight there, so I got to cover that up. Isn't that amazing?
Crazy.
The foliage is my favorite part. It just surprises me every time.
The right side's my favorite foliage though.
This one? Okay, I'm not gonna mess with it. The other thing that I really like to do with foliage, if I'm feeling like experimental or edgy, is I'll take different brushes. I could do rounds, I could do filberts, I can do washes, flats, and I just kind of like smear it around. Or like do brush strokes with it as well. And that just introduces new textures, that introduces new size of marks. And that just makes it more believable, you know? Smear it.
Yeah, I love the dry brush on, or the bigger brush on the different things.
Yeah. Then I think I might slightly, so I'm looking at my windmill here, and I think I just need to add that angle to straighten it up. There we go, that feels better. And this is where you take a step back and you say, okay, how are my values lining up? Are there some white sections that are maybe standing out too much? Or do I need to blend something? Or do I have the opportunity to add more texture? Or, you know, like this white highlight right in between is bothering me, so I'm just gonna blend that out. And there's a white section over here that's bothering me, so I'm just going to blend that out. And then I'm gonna do one more hunk here. Maybe this constitutes one more wash. What do we think?
Magnificent.
It looks good.
Did you add green in the reference photo?
Did I add green?
Yeah, for the stems in the flowers?
In the reference photo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I never even saw that.
See, they're right there. They're
love
just
that.
really tiny. I didn't leave as much white space, like space in between. So then I made a mental note of myself like, hey, make sure you leave space.
Nice.
Sometimes I like to blend these out just to get the softest value. Like a faraway tree. Yeah. Okay, nice. I'm gonna stop messing with it.
Great.
But this is our project. It's fun, and I really love how my sky turned out. And we played with different textures. I showed you guys how to kind of create depth within painting a lot of flowers. We had fun with color. And don't be afraid to make this your own if you want to change up the colors, composition. Maybe these are lavender fields instead or something like that, you know, or pumpkin fields. Ooh. It's the same principle. You would just do round pumpkins. Okay, if you are on Instagram, you can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. If you're on Facebook, you can join our watercolor Facebook group. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. And I just want to peel off this edge so you can see that clean. Gorgeous.
So gorgeous.
Edge. Yeah. Oh. It's so funny how a clean edge or a matte or a frame can just totally change a painting.
Oh, and make it look so sharp.
Make it look finished.
Yeah.
There are some people that post about that in the group sometimes, like, whoa, I framed this, gave it a matte, and all of a sudden it looks like art.
That's cool.
Which is pretty fun. Yes.
Love it.
Okay. And if you're interested, this is from the Around the World box. And if you need any of these supplies, paint, butcher tray palette, or brushes, whatever you need, you can find it at letsmakeart.com. See you guys next time. Bye.